nothing to lose.
Okay.
The stretch is the mode I use, and I like it.
Today's the 7th of Elul and the 10th, right? 10th of September, I think. I think we're 3 days apart now. Maybe we're just 2. Yeah, it's the 10th. Okay, I think so. So we're in chapter 19. Okay. So we're dealing with the issue of this skip. We said that there's 3 stages that Echad alludes to. The first stage is Hashem as Yachid, as singular, and then the Chet being Chochma, wisdom, and the Dalet being Dibur, or speech, which is Malchus. וביאור הדברים, הנה כתיב אתה השם לבדך, אתה עשית את השמיים. There's a verse that reads, you Hashem alone, you are alone, singular, אתה עשית, you made the heavens. וצריך להבין איך הוא לבדו, מאחר שעשה את השמיים. And one needs to ask, so how can he be alone if he made the heavens? When we say the heavens, we don't mean space outside of the atmosphere. That's one of the meanings. But usually when a verse says something like that, you made the heavens, it's talking about the supernal realm.
Yeah.
So it's talking about angels and...
I mean the supernal realm meaning beyond our comprehension.
Right. Well, I don't know if comprehension, but beyond...
But beyond physicality.
Right, beyond our senses.
Okay, beyond our senses. Okay.
So it's usually referring to that, the spiritual realm. Okay. So how can he be alone if he made the heavens, which means that he also made supernal beings? וגם להבין מה שכתוב אני הוויה לא שניתי. There's another verse which is very, very famous from one of the prophets, I think Micah, but I don't remember. אני הוויה לא שניתי ואתם בני ישראל, בני יעקב לא כליתם. אני הוויה לא שניתי means I am Havaya, I have not changed. So there's no change in Hashem. And it also says, ואתה הוא קודם שנברא העולם ומי שנברא. And it's you, meaning you, the way you are, before the world was created, meaning in the singular state, and after, he's also the same. בשווה ממש, it's all equal. שאין הנבראים פועלים שום שינוי בו יתברך. Creation does not create change in the Creator. ולא כמו בהשתלשלות עילה ועלול, and not like when we say השתלשלוס, cause and effect, where there, עילה ועלול, שהעילה משתנה בעצמו, כששופע לעלול ממנו כמו בהשפעת רב לתלמיד. There, when you're talking about cause and effect, being the cause changes the cause. It changes the agent. And he gives an example, for instance, when you're talking about a teacher teaching a student. By teaching, he changes. Because when a person is voicing, giving words to his thoughts, when he needs to explain it to someone else, he undergoes a change himself. He understands things better. He doesn't stay the same. So, obviously this is a little bit different than mechanical cause and effect, but even in mechanical cause and effect, the energy that was in the cause has now been transferred to the effect. So he may not know about it. He himself, the cause, may not know that he has less energy because he's not conscious. But there's certainly a change. So cause and effect, ishtalshalus as we called it, this chain of events, this certainly causes a change in the mover, in the one that's above, moving the one that's below. והעניין, כי בדבר השם השמיים נעשו, שהשמיים ושמי השמיים וכל צבאם מלאכים ונשמות, והעניין, כי בדבר השם שמיים נעשו, שהשמיים ושמי השמיים וכל צבאם מלאכים ונשמות, נתהוו רק מאותיות דיבורו. So he says, what we call the heavens, meaning the souls and the angels and all that, that was created, was made only, again using the parable of speech, only through speech, Hashem's speech. וכללותם הוא דיבור אחד. And actually, they were all created in one word, or one utterance. כמאמר הז"ל, בהי נברא העולם הזה. And the sages capture this, and they're saying that this entire reality that we are now in was created with one letter, Hey. Just Hey, that's all that was needed. Why do they say this? I mean, they weren't there. What are they saying? They're trying to give us some grasp of how inclusive and total this speech is. That even by uttering how different it is than everything that came before, that even by uttering one letter, that's like enough to create all of this reality. They also say something like that the first verse of the Torah is the first utterance with which Hashem created the world, even though there's 10 utterances later, but Bereshit is like a general utterance also. How can this be? Why would one letter be enough to create all of this? So he says, כמשל ביטול אות אחת לגבי כללות נפש המדברת, שיכול לדבר דיבורים עד אין קץ ותכלית, כך הוא ביטול כל העולמות הנבראים בדיבור אחד לגבי מהותו ועצמותו יתברך. When I utter one letter, I just say, Hey. What is that relative to all that I can say? It's nothing. It's like one, and they use the letter Hey because it's the least of the letters. It's called the light letter, Ataklila. Hey is just the.
It's a breath.
It's just the breath coming out. What is that compared to everything I'm going to say in my life? It's like negligible. It's nothing. Absolutely nothing. So they didn't mean to say, when they said this, they didn't mean to say that the world is just concentrated at the beginning. They also mean to say that it's so nullified compared to God's essence. In the same way that the Hey that I'll say is nothing compared to everything that I'm going to speak during my life. So everything I'm going to speak, that's like God Himself. And this Hey doesn't change Him. But again, why is it? Because everything that was created in the beginning had a complete, total sense of being nullified relative to God. It felt like it's nothing. This is the main issue that we have. We don't feel that we're nothing compared to God's utterance. We don't feel that we're nothing compared to God. Yesterday it dawned on me. It says something very interesting about King David. It says that he constantly had a feeling of being like a child that was prematurely born. And when you think about a preemie, like the way they call them now, so you think of someone who has a weak body. And you might think that King David's feeling of being nothing compared to, meaning to feel premature is like to feel that I have nothing holding me up except for God holding me at this moment. So for years I thought that this meant that he had a feeling of weakness in his body, that he needed God to support him all the time.
Okay.
But it suddenly dawned on me last night that that's not the image of King David that we get.
Oh.
He's like a warrior.
Read through it.
He's a very powerful man.
Yes.
Very physically
Very
powerful.
Yes.
And I went in that direction because I thought, so what could give you the sense that you have nothing to rely on, to live on, except for being physically weak? He says, no, it's not. Physically, he was the most robust there is. It all came from his perception, from his understanding. Perception, right? That all that I am, as powerful as I am, as strong as I am, as physically fit as I am,
completely dependent.
right?
Yes.
And that comes from the mind. It doesn't come from the body.
Wow.
So they had this perception also, just as much, that everything that was created in the beginning had this perception that it's like the letter Hey out of everything that a person will speak. And now, in the beginning it was very evident. For us, it's just not evident.
But we're talking about the beginning. You're talking about
First day of creation, let's call it.
the first day of creation. We're talking about physicality. Physicality doesn't feel.
No, so we understand that these things that were first created, like it says, the heavens were created, so they're conscious. So these angels, these supernal beings, the souls, they're conscious of themselves to some degree.
Okay. You're talking about supernal.
But it's true. It's true in the end that when these things inhabit a body, they lose that. The reason that we are not so aware, we're not sensitive to our true state is because of our body. And that's, in a certain sense, why the body begins to break down at some point, to return that perception to the person. It's called lo le'olam chosen. A person should not think that they will forever be resilient. There's an end to it. And as a person approaches the end of his life in the normal course of events, the weakness sets in.
Yes.
Now, again, another example of David being this way, that he doesn't need his body to deteriorate, to perceive this, is Moses. So Moshe Rabbeinu, he until his very last breath is 100% robust.
Yes.
And resilient. His body is completely functioning. He didn't need it. Right. Because he felt his entire life from his perception.
Yes.
He understood it. But it's true that because our bodies are relatively robust, for a long time we don't feel this. That's why young people, it's very hard to teach a young person to understand their limitations, to understand their dependence on God. Right. It's very hard to teach it because of the body. And the body also has hormones and all kinds of things that drive it. So a person feels that they have all, how could they ever... So sages say that's why people have hardships in life. And that's why it's a good thing to get married early, to have the hardships of children, to feeling that you need help, that you need... there's even this saying in Chassidus that people become rectified from one another. What do you mean from one another? When they need to rely on one another. That's the reason why everybody needs someone all the time. You can't get along in this world by yourself. You need to have other people helping you, assisting you, doing things for you. And today, theoretically, it should have been even the most powerful, because in the past people were more resilient, more self-reliant. Today, everybody's dependent on thousands of people just to eat.
The koach hanefesh is less.
Right.
Poskim have told me that they paskin much more lenient
psychologically
for like fasting
than
they did two generations.
Right. Everybody's much more lenient. But strangely, even though people are weaker,
yes,
it doesn't cause them to be less prideful.
No.
They continue to think
yes,
that somehow I'm running the world.
That seems to be a contradiction.
Well, I think it's because of technology, that especially cell phones and computers and the internet gives you that
sense of power,
that illusion. Okay, ולכן אינן פועלים שינוי כלל בו יתברך. And therefore, because they're so negligible, they're again compared to the letter Hey coming out, all the initial creation. So it doesn't create any change in Hashem, because it's like the letter Hey coming out of me is not going to change me in any way. וזהו שכתוב גם כן, אתה ולבדך ממש, כי ביטול זהו כביטול אות א' בעודו בכוח חוכמתו, טרם שיצא בגילוי בפה, שאז היה עין ואפס. And that's why the verse says, you are alone. Why are you alone? He just created the heavens. Why do you say that he's alone? Because this sense of nullification is so intense that the creatures feel, and Hashem feels, that it's like they've never even come out. The Hey is so negligible. So it's like one letter that's not even been uttered yet. The Hey is so light. It's like still in his wisdom, it's still in his thought that he's going to speak it. Now, why is it connected to wisdom? This the Tanya discusses a little bit more in length. He'll touch upon it in a moment. But this all has to do with language. Language in Chassidus is always connected to wisdom. And the idea here is that no one knows how to speak. No one's ever taught how to speak. Now, obviously, when something goes wrong, you have to teach them. So there is
Yeah.
You know, there's a speaking technician, like someone who teaches you how to speak, especially after a stroke or something like that. Why do you have to relearn it? But in the normal course of events, children are never taught how to speak. They just speak somehow.
Yep.
And how does that happen? So we understand that, so we associate that with the sphere of wisdom. Because wisdom is unknown to us. It's like, there's always something in wisdom that it's somewhere in between consciousness and superconsciousness. It's somewhere we don't fully appreciate, and we're not fully able to be aware of how wisdom works. The wisdom, says Job, comes out of nothingness. It's like some kind of, it's hard to perceive. So anything that we know how to do, but we don't know how we do it, and it's not instinctual. You can't say about speech that it's instinctual, because you have to be around people.
No, they say that if kids were raised among animals,
Right, they don't.
like an animal.
Right, they won't learn the way we speak.
The way we speak, right.
It depends on your environment, and you'll learn different languages based on your environment. So it's not entirely instinctual. So it's something different. In any case, it's associated with wisdom. And this is discussed in the Tanya, chapter 20 and 21. לפיכך, אף על פי שאתה עשית את השמיים מכל מקום אתה ולבדך ממש, מאחר שהשמיים והארץ וכל אשר בהם בטלים במציאות כאילו אינן כביטול הדיבור בעודו במחשבה ובכוח חוכמתו. So, this is what the verse is saying. You are alone, even though you've created the heavens and even the earth, because in their true state, all the creations are completely nullified to Hashem. And so, it's as if they've never emerged even. So when we say that the chet of Echad is wisdom, what we're saying is it's the state of already having some kind of form, shape maybe, but not having emerged yet into reality. And that is why we associate self-nullification with wisdom. Because self-nullification, then, what we're understanding now, is seeing myself in the state in which I'm just emerging from godliness. And in that state, I'm not yet separate. I'm not yet some kind of separate being. Like we said, that the body gives us this feeling of separation and resilience and robustness and so on. But the form itself, when it's in its origin, in wisdom, in God's wisdom, it's as if I don't really exist. I'm a thought maybe, I'm the beginning of something forming, but I'm not something yet. And as we said, speech, which is the next stage, as Hashem actually utters a word, not just the hey, not just the beginning of air coming out. Again, this is not to say that Hashem has air coming out, this is just a parable. So the beginning of, or the root of where speech comes from, like we said, is in wisdom. And that's why it says, you've created all, or you've made all with wisdom. And it says, another verse, Hashem b'chokhmah yasad haaretz. Hashem founded the earth on wisdom. Now, what is this? What is this wisdom in this context? Elu tzerufei otiyot ha'elyonim shenivreu behem shamayim ve'aretz. Really, this is what we call the different permutations of letters through which the heavens and the earth are created. And anybody who's learned any amount of Jewish mysticism knows that there's this idea that the essence of everything is its name in Hebrew. Meaning, in other words, that the letters form the essence of something. So, someone would ask, so if I take apart the body, am I going to find letters there? Or, there was this really cute thing a few years ago, I don't understand where it came from. There was this geneticist who claimed to show that everywhere that you look in the DNA, you find some Yud Kei Vav Kei. You find God's 4-letter name. I never followed it really because I never have too much patience for these things. But people take this literally. They say like, oh, the letters somehow the letters are there. Not long ago, somebody came to me with this idea that he took all the languages, or many languages, and he ran them through a spectral analyzer, an audio spectral analyzer. which means that he's taking you say a word, and it analyzes it in terms of its frequencies, like what frequencies are showing, and you can show this. This is a very common thing. Every mixer who does music does this all the time. I don't remember if he was using a Fourier transform or just direct spectral analysis, whatever he was doing. And then he showed that in Hebrew, when you speak, you see on the spectral analyzer the actual letters of the word you just spoke. So it's like a Rorschach.
Yeah.
It depends on what you see.
Yeah.
So I looked at it and I said, "I don't see that." He said, "What word did the person say?" I don't know. No idea. So, okay, maybe it's AI. AI is a genius in picking up patterns. So maybe if you run it through AI and you do this, then you'll find other results. But I looked at it and all I could see was like nothing. Anyway, as people are looking for this, like as some kind of very very literal thing that you're supposed to find the letters somehow, either in the world or in the speech or maybe in the brain somehow. All this. So I tend to discount this understanding. I don't think that it's the right way to approach this. I can't throw it out completely because sometimes the sages speak and I understand it as a parable, and it turns out years later that they were very serious, that they understood it as something literal, not just as something figurative. But in any case, when my understanding is that when they say that the world is created out of letters, they don't mean to say there are actual letters at the root. What they mean to say is that the human perception of reality does not work without letters, does not work without language. And in language, you can find levels of complexity. So the simplest level of complexity is, again, just being able to get some air out. That's what we said about the hay. Then when you begin to say that there's 22 letters, so you're saying, okay, so there's a way to get the air out and to add some kind of consonant sound with it.
Yeah.
Aleph, okay, and so on, and b. And you're using, with some of the letters, they're just guttural, and then there's letters that have to do with the roof of the mouth, and then with the tongue, and then with the lips, and with the teeth and lips. So we have 5 origins of letters, as we call it. That's what we use in Hebrew. In other languages, there may be others. Ethiopians, even though it's a Semitic language, they have letters that we don't have. They form them in some other way. They're all guttural, but they form them in a different way. So you may have different variations on this, but these are the general 5 ways in which the nasal letters. They're still guttural, but you use the nose more. In the end, we say that these are the 5 origins of sound in language. But the idea here is that there is no human experience without language. That's really what it's coming to say. You won't find, there's no way for a human being to relate to the world as a human being with the intellect, with the emotions, with everything, unless you have language. And again, language has levels of complexity, from the simple breath that comes out, and now he says that wisdom is where the permutations, the joining of letters happens. You have to join letters together to get words. So that's where this is happening. And I've said this before, we have like a minute maybe. It's not enough time to capture this whole idea. The way that the Kabbalists understood Ezekiel's vision of the chariot was that it's a linguistic vision. It's a vision of language. And so he sees 3 types of angels in his vision of the chariot. He has Seraphim and Chayot and Ofanim. So the Kabbalists, they took this and they said these are, because it was about the same time that this was emerging, these are the 3 root letters of every word in Hebrew. Now, not every word has a 3-letter root, but in general. So you have these, there's the one that's moving everything, that's the first letter of the root. The Chayot, the living angels, they're the second letter, and then the last letter is an Ofan, it's just a wheel. So they have this whole interpretation. This is in some of the earliest books of Kabbalah. That's how they interpret it. Of the chariot being language. I find this very appealing. Other people don't, because they're like, I want there to be angels. But this is how, the Kabbalists were pretty mystical people. And they still saw this very rationally.
Yeah.
That what he saw was the origins of language. That's what he saw. And that is the chariot on which God rides.
Wow.
That's how you get Hashem to appear in the world.
Yeah.
If you don't speak, if you don't say Tehillim, if you don't daven, there's no Hashem. If you don't learn Torah, Hashem is not here. What does it mean? Hashem is here, of course, but He's not revealed.
Really? Yeah.
It's not creation yet. So again, we're saying that there's Hashem before that. And we even try to get there, like with blowing the shofar. We have this simple sound that we utter, and that's like Hashem in the Yachid state almost, in between Yachid and Chokhmah, somewhere in between, which is where we're aiming for. But in general, the language is the chariot. It is the vehicle upon which godliness appears in the world. Okay, so let's end here.